It's another beautiful day in the heart of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and you're watching the Abuja Market. I am Osita Okere. The Abuja Market is a program that brings you different happenings in and around the Federal Capital Territory and, of course, the rest of the nation. On today's edition, we shall be looking at the impact of importation of fuel by the NNPCL into the country. And we shall be talking to the man, Professor Ken Ife, who is a developmental economist and an analyst. Let's take a short break. When we return, we shall be taking you straight to the interview session.
Let me tell you what comes out of crude. You have butane, benzene, you have LPG, you have naphtha, you have jet fuel, you have kerosene, you have heating oil, you have waxes, lubricant oil. You got over 100 products. But it's only one that they say they are bringing back, and then government has to go and find $4 billion. The name of this game is produce more, refine more in the country. Give them licenses.
Earlier, I spoke to Professor Ken Ife in an interview where he bared his mind on the issue of the fuel importation and its resultant effect and ripple effect on the people of the nation. Now let's take you straight to the interview.
Well, there are a few things that we got to get clear about. One is the PIA, which is the Petroleum Industry Act from 2021, created a new economic landscape for the petroleum industry. It set up an NNPC, it set up upstream commission, and set up midstream, downstream authority, and requires that what we call the supply, the DCSO, which is domestic supply crude, domestic crude supply obligation, and that is section 109, and then section 110 is about the domestic gas. So those are the two. It says that the midstream downstream authority will regularly inform the authority, the commission, of the capacity, local refining capacity available. And there are two things that can happen. One is that then they now advise all the processing, all the lessees that are producing crude to give priority to local refining capacity, so they will allocate. Then the second thing that could happen is that there could be a shortfall in the local processing capacity or refining capacity, in which case the need can arise to import crude. Now, what we have is that we do not have any such declaration or evidence that there is a shortfall in local refining capacity, which is consistent with the law. Now, without that, import licenses were issued and a huge 200 million liters of fuel were imported into the country. There's something else. PIA law also wants, apart from that violation, second thing that it wants is that if you do imports, then there are standards. There are minimum standards on fuel that has to be imported in the country, and those standards are the American standards, and you need certified and qualified and accredited laboratory in the country that would check the compliance across those standards. And all the other people have to be transparent. So that has not been done. And let me give you some of the items that have to be tested. You have the density, the specific gravity of the product that tells you the amount of, whether there is a adulteration in the petrol. You have sulfur content, which ECOWAS has limited by 30th of January to no more than 50 ppm. Because we know the damage it causes to not only the engines, but to health, environment, all kinds of things. You have also distillation curve, cloud point, pour point, flash point, things like copper strip tests that will talk about corrosion of if there's high level of impurity in the petrol, it will corrode the metals. We have all of those, including octane number. So none of this was carried out with transparency so that we can actually see the quality of what is being imported. Now the danger is this: we are now having to experience dumping of substandard products into the country, because these products don't actually meet the requirement of the host country where they were produced. They are being dumped here. And there are two aspects of dumping. One is we are sending substandard products that will not conform and that will do all the damage. But secondly, there's predatory pricing. Predatory pricing means that these products are coming in subsidized or low cost so that they can displace and affect and intimidate local production capacities in the country. And of course, you know we have modular refineries. And then of course, you know Dangote refinery is there leading the charge on import substitution. So you got all that are major concern of the public. But the third one, of course, is that this hemorrhaging our foreign reserves. Because wherever you get that dollar to do that import, hundreds of millions of dollars, eventually the central bank will have to deplete our reserves to defend the naira. So how can we have two things? How can we have NNPC telling us that they have got two refineries working, and then there are all these allegations? That's number one. But number two is, why would the likes of Dangote be producing not only PMS, but urea, AGO, diesel, jet fuel, kerosene, exporting them in cargoes? I mean, selling them to Saudi Aramco, number one in this part of the world, or is it the BP? Selling those to $N, and some other people are depleting the dollar. It doesn't make sense. And I need to also say this: President Tinubu succeeded in removing subsidy of fuel from public purse to private purse. And then Dangote coming in means that we have more competition. We also have modular refineries that are also coming in. We need an environment where competition will drive down prices. Last December, something that hasn't happened over the last 20 years happened. One is that, during the Yuletide period, Christmas period, there's hoarding of fuel, long queues, hike in prices of fuel, and then also the prices will affect food supply. All of them hit. That's why you have the highest inflation in December. It didn't happen last year, because Dangote just brought down the price up to 935 and then enforced that across the whole country. For you to do that means that he has to pick up equalization fund. Equalization fund has been merged with PPRP and then with downstream and midstream department merged together, and it has been knocked off. It's off. Presumably owing 80 billion to 100 billion naira to oil marketers. So there was no way you could have that sold at that price around the country if they didn't pick up that bill. And that cost them over $10 billion. And now, as you know, last week, they further brought down the price again. So Nigerian people are benefiting from the prices coming down, and is now being asked, Dangote is being asked by the oil marketer that imported fuel to increase the price of fuel. That's what they're asking him to increase it. To whose disadvantage? So the population is beginning to enjoy low-cost fuel, and it will continue to go down, and at the same time, it generates more revenue, dollar revenue from the exports.
Yeah, is this really low cost, when they bring down this price? Is it really low cost going by what Nigerians faced? And from the time of the removal of the fuel subsidy, we knew we were buying fuel at about 200 and something naira, up to when it was removed, or 100 and something naira, then 300% increase to 500, and then 700 to over 1,000. So when it comes from 1,200 or more than that, back to 800 and something or 900, is that really the fuel coming down, or is still within the threshold?
But NNPC had it at 1,050. They were forced to come down to 899. But talking about NNPC had it at 1,050. It wasn't that everything is just pushing it down. And we know that it will continue to go down as long as the implementation of because within the PIA, it allowed for naira and dollar for purchase of crude. And it's there in the act. And the president enforced it, which is called naira to crude swap. It's been enforced by the president. As long as that swap continues, and then we stop this reckless importation of fuel, because there's a bigger cost of buying substandard fuel, and that cost is erosion of the engines, the cars, destruction, and then the health. So there are all those costs that we can't even quantify, let alone the pressure to increase the prices. So Nigerians are paying not only by poor quality, but also we are paying hard cash and inflation, and then unsettled foreign exchange that that has been settling over the last 1 month, but that's going to add more pressure to it. And then our reserves are being burnt, which is there to protect our debt service and then also to protect the naira. So we have so much to complain about.
Okay, so what can the government do? What can the government do to assuage the sufferings of the people, going by the fact that Nigeria is basically an oil-dependent economy? And from anything that happens in the oil sector, it really has that ripple effect on the masses.
For over 50 years, we have suffered under the yoke of NNPC and IOCs. But since 2021 that we finally got PIA on, what we are now suffering is the behavior of NNPC. Remember, for 3 years, usually NNPC passes about $3 billion every month through central bank. For 3 years, the new NNPC Limited will not let a penny go to, will not let more than 10% of their receipts go to a central bank. But now President Tinubu has restored that. So that was a big gain for us. Now, but the thing is that if you look at the situation that we were facing before now, we were having all the crude sent out on crude swap, and then what we are getting back presumably was just PMS. But let me tell you what comes out of crude. You have butane, benzene, you have LPG, you have naphtha, you have liquid, you have jet fuel, you have kerosene, you have home heating oil, you have waxes, lubricant oil. You got over 100 products. But it's only one that they say they are bringing back, and then government has to go and find $4 billion every year as subsidy. In other words, they call it under recovery. Just imagine what Nigerians had to go through. And now all of those are now water under the bridge. The new President Tinubu has put an end to this and allowed the heavy competition to take place. Somebody has invested $20 billion to build the world's largest single train refinery. And then there are conspiracies against this in the name of competition. How are you competing? You compete by building more local capacity. That's how you compete. You don't compete by bringing in substandard product to flood the market and still crying for prices to go up. That's not how you compete. What I should advise the president to do, first of all, find all those civil servants in the middle and midstream and downstream authority that are not playing ball, and even those in the upstream commission that are not playing ball, and then the oil marketers, give them modular licenses, let them go and refine, let them set up their own modular refinery. The name of this game is produce more, refine more in the country. Give them licenses. Obasanjo has released all these marginal oil fields. If you have a 50 million barrels of crude marginal oil field, and $75 million is what it costs you to have a 20,000 barrel a day modular refinery, that will work for how many years? About 50 years, about 30 years. So let them, give them licenses, let them go and build their own modular refinery, so that we can have sanity. and we have good competition. But let's not allow what they're trying to do, because they are destroying all the work that has been done over the last 2 years by the president, and then they're pushing people back into inflation and extreme poverty. And you are endangering huge investment that has been made. $20 billion is not, and then don't forget that over the last 10 years, they've burnt over $10 billion repairing the refineries. And can you explain to me, if these two refineries are clearly producing fuel, why are you importing? Or why are you enabling an import of this? Or why are you, why is that? That even raises more question about the integrity of the assertion that they have started producing. And I think we should put the stuff. And then the midstream authority, they seem to be wanting to build a standard accredited, internationally accredited laboratory. But in the meantime, why don't you take the sample to Dangote's refinery that's internationally accredited? All of you will be there and they will do the test. So we are denied that evidence of a transparent test based on the American standard to show that what we have is an acceptable quality of product. And that's not fair.
Oh, okay, Prof. Now that the NNPC is a limited liability company, it's now a public-private organization, don't you think the competition is going to be stiff because it's now really competing as a private entity right now rather than being a fully government organization?
Well, that's a big question. Now, let me tell you something. I have always argued that NNPC is now a private company. It's no longer the NNPC we knew before that was purely owned by government. But now this is a privately set company. They should make their way to the capital market, just like Saudi Aramco did. Saudi Aramco is owned by Saudi Arabia. They wanted to borrow $25 billion, and they said, no, give me the value of my Aramco, Saudi Aramco. They valued it at $1.5 trillion. And then he sold 5%, took it to the capital market. But when you go to the capital market, the big boys, the small boys, everybody enters. Just like LNG. LNG is run properly and is giving us dividend. And there are 3 IOCs in there with federal government. Okay, go in there and then you have transparency, you have accountability, you have prudence in the use of these resources, and then you have a proper management. And but they don't want to do that. I've been asking for this for over 2 years. They don't want to do that. They keep saying end of the year, end of the year. That is an important step to go, and then government will release a lot of money. Government can take 10% or 20% on an IPO and then get a lot of dollars to solve our problem. And then that's number one. Number two, give these licenses to these chaps, wherever they are, to go and set up their own modular refinery and go and compete. Then number three is when you've done that, we can now begin to investigate, carry out 2 levels of investigation. One investigation is what happened before the PIA, going back. And then the second one will be what happens since PIA till now. So that you can actually get a clearer picture. You've read about the squandering of riches. All right? You've seen Hillary Clinton come here and tell us that $600 billion of our monies are all over the place. I mean, we all know this, but you have to go and do these investigations to be able to pin things down. And I also know that another battle is going on independent tax authority that will, generate more revenue. If we join the OECD and UNDP, all that stuff, then we can get up to $50 billion every year from taxes of investments abroad, Nigerian investments. So that is another thing going on. But we need to deal with the monster that we have violation of this law that needs to protect everybody and have a level playing field. And it is not fair. It is not fair for civil servants to sit in their office and be poking their finger on the eye of $20 billion investment and doing anything and everything possible to undermine that scale of investment. It's not fair. And we have to call a spade a spade. Give the people their own license, let them go and set up their own modular refinery so that we can see light in the end of the tunnel and we have a competitive position. So that's my take on this.
So, don't you think that the alleged importation of fuel by NNPC negates the issue of the fuel subsidy removal?
No, what I'm saying that the fuel subsidy has effectively been transferred by the president from public purse to private purse, which is what it should be. Then with a commitment to keeping the naira to crude swap, that price will continue to come down. Now, I have assurance that this price will continue to come down. That means be more and more deep-seated competition that will take place. So regardless of whether NNPC denied the importation or other things, they have denied. But the fact of the matter, somebody is issuing license to somebody to import these things, and they are not playing to the rule. The rule is being violated on several grounds, both on the grounds of our health, on grounds of subsidy, on grounds of dumping of products, on grounds of penetration pricing, or what you call predatory pricing. So there's so many grounds, and that it has to be resisted.
So what do you think has held Nigeria back from being a net exporter of refined products, rather than always going to import just petrol, basically, and diesel, when we have over 100 different products? What do you think is the issue? Is it the inability of government to do this, or does it have to do with the political elites, the political class? So what actually has been the problem, or what is the problem?
Nigeria's economy has been an import-dependent economy by design. And we know that, not only in terms of the raw materials being produced, but also in terms of mineral resources being exported as crude rather than as refined products. And that means that an import-dependent economy means that we are perpetually vulnerable to global economic headwinds. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it is COVID, supply chain disruption, or whether it's Russia, Ukraine crisis that pushes prices of gas up in the US and EU, and then we're importing there and bringing imported inflation. Whatever it is, even if the American subprime crisis of 2008, prices will be going up because you are an import-dependent economy. Then we move from that phase to the phase where we are now facing local refining capacity of NNPC that has melted down, and then others moved in and started investing. And then now we are in a comfortable position where local capacity is capable of meeting all our needs, and we have no need to import, and we are still seeing import, which is undermining the law itself that has regulated the sales situation. So we have seen all that. Now the question I want to ask is this: look at a refinery, local refineries that are producing not only PMS, but are also producing urea, fertilizer from the same stock of crude, producing kerosene, producing A1 jet fuel, producing them. Not only that they are producing those, they are creating jobs, and they are creating smaller businesses. Not less than 5,000 factories are going to set up to use these primary raw materials like butadiene, like butane, like benzene, like propene, and all these ethylene monomeric materials to produce polymeric materials. We have all these industries that will be setting up locally. I mean, you're looking at transport systems that could take no less than 20,000 trucks. So you've got logistics, you've got so many companies that are going to be dependent on this, our local refining capacity, to grow the economy. But what you are having is somebody's job is being created outside, and you're importing their substandard fuel and dumping it here without all the benefits that we are saying. So there's no way you can compare the two. One is propor, enabling, creating sustainable poverty reduction and empowering and growing our economy. The other one is just there to hemorrhage the economy and then put us in this constant forex flux. So there's no comparison for the two. Not to talk of when the law is being abused. It makes no sense. And that's why I'm saying there's no point calling anybody name and just say, the president, this is what you need to do. Because we can't live with it. It's not fair. Let me tell you what comes out of crude. You have butane, benzene, you have LPG, you have naphtha, you have jet fuel, you have kerosene, you have heating oil, you have waxes, lubricant oil. You got over 100 products. But it's only one that they say they are bringing back, and then government has to go and find $4 billion every year as subsidy. The name of this game is produce more, refine more in the country. Give them licenses.
Well, there you have it. Thanks for joining us. I'm Osita Okere. See you next time, same station next week on the same program. Thanks for watching.